For the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Sal Hernandez, and we've got several matters before us today. But first, pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Has the Commission had a chance to review last month's minutes?
Yes.
We have.
So? Yes.
Is there a motion regarding those minutes? Move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Our first item on the agenda today is a new record driver permit review for Julian Clemens and Dwight Mason. Mr. Fields.
The applications are in order. Unfortunately, Mr. Clement, as I reviewed his record, it is extensive, and I felt that the commission probably would want to review his record. But his application is in order. He qualifies. I don't think anything on his. It's my impression that there's nothing on here that would disqualify him outside of he does have an extensive record that I wanted you to review.
Did he disclose his record properly?
Mr. Fields, as I understand, there's nothing on his record that would disqualify him today.
I do not believe so. Again, there are some charges on here, but the charge, and there are several charges, but the charges are either too old. Most of them are too old.
Quite a few that were dismissed as well.
Is Mr. Clemens here today?
Here I am, sir.
Hello. See, did looks like your most recent arrest occurred in May 2013. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct? And then that got dismissed on May 12th, 2014? December 12th.
Yes, sir.
So just 3 months ago, or 2 months, just 2 months ago. Then.
Yes, sir.
You did have an assault and battery conviction January 2012?
January 2000. No.
No?
Looks like you were arrested for a first-degree murder charge, and that's the one that was dismissed. What were the reasons for the dismissal?
Yes, sir.
What were the reasons?
Lack of evidence, wrong person. Just went to court, and they dismissed it. Set for trial. Actually, it was set for trial the next week of, and they dismissed it. I think they were waiting on Mr. Funk to take office because it was kind of like in the process of a new district attorney. They ran about him. He didn't feel it was able to be prosecuted. and they filed a dismissal. It was actually a case from for which I was 1997.
Mr. Clemens, I apologize. I was reading that wrong. It was actually 2001 when you had the assault and battery conviction,
Yes,
right?
and it was pleaded down. There wasn't any assault to it. It was a verbal assault. They asked me to plead out to a lesser charge, which after I looked at my record, it doesn't have a lesser charge on there. It kept it as an assault. I think it started out as an aggravated assault.
It did.
That she started out and made the allegation that it was after the police investigated. We went to court. The DA said that she'll do it for assault, which was a verbal assault. I did a 52-week program and the peace program, graduated, did my probation, done my time.
And that was at a Division II criminal court, it looks like.
2000, that was some years ago. I'm really not, I want to say it was, I know it was over here, I just don't know which court it was. A lot of the charges that come up on my background weren't even, I think it's like 5 charges, but they were all dismissed. Some of them was using my name. Like it's an evading arrest, an assault, several other things, but I think they pop up whenever you run my record, but they also say dismissed. Neither one of them have convictions decided. As far as my record, I don't know if extensive. I don't know how far extensive it is. I know I like 3 charges. There's a driving, there's that assault, and then the most recent one is the first-degree murder, which was dismissed. As far as I'm aware of, it's like 5 or 6 other charges that were dismissed as well.
You did list some other cases out of Rutherford County. What's the last court
That was a
case you had?
DUI.
That was a DUI?
Yes, sir.
What year was that?
Oh, 2006. When I was doing this, I had my background in front of me. I don't have it in front of me. Please forgive my memory.
It looks like you'll be employed at Advanced Towing and Recovery.
Correct.
Do you have a representative here from that company?
Yes, I have the owner, and then I have a character witness as well. Yes, the owner and my father-in-law.
Okay.
Did you have the owner join you? Don't mind me asking, what makes you comfortable with Mr. Clemens' application?
I've been working with him since he applied for my company. He's been riding with me. He's been working on my yard for me. But I told him I couldn't get him in a truck until I came here and satisfied you guys and made sure he was comfortable. He's been around my kids. He's married.
How long has he been with you?
He's been around, just working around the yard for about a month.
A month? Okay.
I can't get him on payroll until.
Right. Okay.
So, Mr. Clemens, what's your interest in driving a wrecker, and what's your past experience?
Well, I've done heavy equipment, outside work, probably 20 years, mostly bulldozer, track hoe. Whenever this charge that came about, my first degree murder, I can't get a job. I've expunged it, filed for it to be expunged across the street. But to be honest with you, it wouldn't even be on my record now if the system moved faster. I already applied for it to be off, so I think they said by April it won't even be on my record. But anywhere I go to fill out an application, I can't get a job due to that charge. So as far as that, I've been knowing the owner here for a while. Prior to, we had rode motorcycles together. Saw that he had a company and just asked him would he be willing to give me a chance. That he done.
And your father-in-law's here as your character witness?
Yes, sir.
Well, that speaks volumes right there.
Yeah, it speaks a lot. He's the chief of police in Mount Juliet, Tennessee.
Chief, could he stand up? Hi. Okay.
So he trusts me with his daughter, so that, and also,
and he carries a gun.
and also Judge Wyatt, whenever I was released on bond, I had made bond. I was placed in his care, and Judge Wyatt thought enough of him to do that versus any monitoring, any checking in, anything.
On the first-degree murder charge?
Yes, sir.
Well, you know, Judge Wyatt's courtroom was where you had that ag assault reduced to assault and battery.
Okay, and that may be the same.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, like I said, you're saying, I think the actual charge was in 1998, and I don't think that I got arrested for it until like 2000 or something like that. I think that's when it was.
I'd make a motion to approve Mr. Clements' application.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right.
Mr. Fields, next, I believe, is Mr. Mason's permit review.
Is Mr. Mason present? Dwight Lamont Mason. He received a letter and was asked to appear in person as well. So we certainly communicated with him.
Is this the same situation where the lengthy record you wanted us to look
Yeah,
at?
he had enough on it that I felt like you needed to see it. Again, I think it was all, I don't think there's disqualifiers in it. It was just an extensive record that I wanted reviewed.
Probably makes sense to push this one.
Do we want to push it to the end of the docket or just
Push it to
defer
next month.
Push it to next month.
Yeah, I make a motion to push this to our next scheduled meeting.
second?
All those in favor? Next item on our agenda, we've got a horse and carriage driver application review for Nathan Redfearon. Mr. Fields.
On Mr. McFerrin's original application, he failed to fully disclose his 2000 charge. He is present. I will advise you, we have a complaint that has been filed against Hat Creek Carriage. Mr. Redfearon is also part of that complaint that was filed. He allegedly was driving one of their carriages without a permit. Representatives are here. That particular hearing, Hat Creek asked that we not have that hearing until the month of March. Normally what we would have been able to do is do them at the same time, but Mr. Redfearon has, again, he did everything he needed to do in terms of the application other than he failed to disclose. But there are, the complainants have a representative here if you'd like to hear from them.
The complaint is he was driving a carriage without a permit.
Correct.
What was the failure to disclose?
A 2000 charge of a worthless check.
Okay.
Mr. Redfearon, will you driving a horse and carriage without a permit?
Yes, sir. I wasn't aware that I needed a permit. I was in my training. I mean, I wasn't aware of it. I didn't know.
Nobody from Hat Creek, the ownership, the management, they didn't tell you you needed a permit?
Well, I knew I needed a permit to drive by myself, but I didn't know that I needed a permit to, for training.
So there was somebody permitted that was operating the carriage?
Yeah, I had the reins in my hand before, but there was somebody in the carriage. The driver was sitting beside me.
What's the rule on that, Billy? Mr. Fields? Sorry.
The rule requires that any person operating a horse and carriage in Davidson County has a permit.
Even in training?
Yeah, there's not a training provision.
Okay.
The training is done off street.
Was there a passenger in the carriage?
Yeah, there was people.
Is there anyone from your company here?
Pardon?
Is there anyone from your company here?
I have a driver who's here.
Okay. Nobody from management?
No,
Was this the driver that was in the carriage with you that night?
well, I rode with him, and there's a lady I rode with her, so I don't know which you're talking about.
This just seems to me as improper directives from their management. If he's in training, if they're not directing their drivers to get permitted first, that comes from management.
And that would be the focus of the complaint that has been filed that would execute here in March. Correct. They were not noticed to be here. In other words, they did agree. They asked that hearing be put off until March.
Right. And Mr. Redfern, you are dealing with a serious violation by operating a horse and carriage without a permit. And that can be that's reason enough alone to deny your application. I agree with Mr. Patel, though, that it seems that the onus of that needs to go more on Hat Creek rather than you personally.
Yeah, can we discuss maybe deferring it till next month? We have both of those conversations at the same time. I would make a motion to defer this to next month so we could have both of those conversations at the same time with management and with Mr. Redfern.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Redfern, we're going to delay your review until next month when we have the Hat Creek complaint before us. Next, we have other passenger vehicles for hire company applications. We have a request by Music City Limo to add Ismail Sultan as a partner.
Anytime there's a change on the face of the application, it has to be reported to the commission for commission action. Everything's in order, but it requires your approval.
I move that we approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we have application reviews. First is Destination Point Limo.
All of the applications are in order and require action from the commission.
Motion to approve.
Is this for all four? Logos VIP, Centennial Transportation, and Smead?
Your
Limo?
answer was for all four?
Well, yes, I'm sorry. All four of the companies that have applied have met the requirements and are eligible to be permitted.
I'm sorry, you want to remake your motion?
I'll make a motion to approve all. That's submitted.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes for all 4 companies. We also have 3 public hearings today. One for review of Taxi Cab Rule 3, which is retention of taxi cab permits. We have review of Taxi Cab Rule 7B, which is liability insurance, and review of Article 1 of Chapter 6.72 relating to the requirement of a finding of public convenience and necessity as a prerequisite to the issuance of new certificates or additional permits to existing permit holders. I've had several people request to speak. If you will limit your comment to 2 minutes, we have a timer, and I'm going to take them for all. We're going to consider all requests to speak at once on any of the 3 issues. So I will go in the order that they've been provided to me. Mr. McIndoe.
My name is Dave McIndoe with Greater Nashville Insurance. All right.
Thank you so much.
Shot clock.
There you go.
I'm here to talk about the liability insurance for the taxi cabs. We spoke last year when we wanted to increase the 100, 300 that we hadn't had enough time to get statistics prove the validation. Should we or should we not? I've had the great honor of representing Haulers Insurance for 27 years, doing taxi business for the city of Nashville and the state of Tennessee. We've had 2 claims in the last 27 years that was on the $50,000 mark. One in 1998 and one this past year. This past year we finished about $52,000. So it's really, I think we're self-insured enough. I think the taxi drivers need to have somewhat of a break with all they're facing within their own system with competition and so forth. I'm not sure where the point of the general liability policy came in effect, that they required it. I don't know if Metro does or somebody. There's somewhere floating around that they have to have a general liability policy. I don't see the need of that, but that's neither here nor there. That would be an insurance, director of insurance question, but there's no coverage outside of the office on a general liability policy. So it's kind of silly to have a black car go get a $400 general liability policy. There's just no coverage there. It doesn't cover the autos. So my recommendation with the statistics we have within Haulers for the past 27 years is it's good. Let's leave it alone and go from there.
Remind us, what are the present current limits?
Liability is 50-150, and UM is 25-50-15. And the unusual thing about it, we talk about the state of Tennessee mandating we have to have insurance. 27% of my losses are on the UM property side, which I think that's ironic how we're supposed to have insurance in the state of Tennessee. We don't have it. It's just no.
Are you saying because of underinsured or uninsured, or because
no insurance?
No insurance.
No insurance.
Do you think the UM coverage should be consistent with the regular coverage of 50, 100, and 50?
Personally, that's what we sell. We sell the 50, 150 liability and UM. The 50, 25, 50, 15, the 15 property side, there's a lot of cars these taxi owners have are $21,000, $22,000, $23,000 that would not be enough insurance for. But again, that's their decision they can make. They can decide to, on your form and your personal insurance as well. You have the right to elect to have a lesser amount. But you ask me what I sell is $5,150.
You said there were 2 claims. One that settled this past year.
This past year we had one that, if it had played out, it would have been around $52,000, a little over $52,000.
What was the previous one a long time ago?
1998, a person hit a person crossing the road. And that was a long, long time ago, and
Don't know.
I don't know what the final verdict would have been, but it would have been over the 50. But it wouldn't have been, no clue, in 1998 what it would have been.
Don't you think, though, 50,000 in 98 went a lot further than 50,000 today?
Sure, and there's, we sell insurance. There's no doubt about it, but you can be overinsured as well. I can sell you life insurance all day long, make your wife happy all day long. But there comes a time and a point when you're overinsured, and at that point, what's it validated? And that's kind of where we are now with the taxis. Is we're there. We've proven the facts this past year that people I represent are within that limit. So why burden them when they got all the other burdens coming into the market?
Thank you. Nathan Spears.
Nathan Spears with the Genie Insurance Agency out of West Nashville. And I would essentially just echo what Mr. McIndoe has indicated as far as the limits are concerned. Just to provide a bit more data, the carrier, my go-to carrier for the past roughly 10 years is Consumers Insurance. And in those 10 years, we've had a total of 5 claims in Davidson County that maxed out the limits. And I would also like to note that those were the old limits, the 25, 50, and 15. Since we've gone to 50, 100, and 50, we've had none that maxed out those limits.
Would any of the old claims have maxed out the new limits?
That's quite possible, but it's kind of arbitrary to really consider that, because oftentimes a claim that pays out, it's not necessarily due to the negligence of a driver. As David indicated, it could also be an uninsured motorist claim, and sometimes the attorney's fees and so forth that are involved in settling those claims are part of the payout as well. So it may actually be a bit more positive in consideration of bodily injury and property damage and so forth.
How many claims have you had in the past year?
In the past year, I couldn't tell you that, but in the past 10 years, close to 1,000.
1,000?
Yes, sir. And most of it is property damage. I don't really want to speak on behalf of cab drivers because that's not what I do, but it's something that I see every week. And what I see more than anything, Patrick, is that it's mostly property damage. We've been remarkably fortunate in regards to bodily injury, and I have that hard data, but it's proprietary, and I've been advised if I share it with you that it becomes public, and I basically don't want to reveal private information. So which I have shared in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Spears.
Thank you.
Michael Kaiser.
I think I'm up here a little bit early, because I wanted to find out what we were talking about on the bottom one of the 3, the requirements for convenience and necessity being a prerequisite.
Right. One of the things that we're considering is changing our scheme of how we issue permits in Nashville.
Okay. Well, and I'm going to be real blunt as always. So it looks like that we give carte blanche to everybody. In the last 2 meetings, we now have acquired 10 more limo companies. So pretty soon, everybody ought to go. I mean, since they get approved quite readily, we ought to just all go open up limo companies and don't call them taxi cabs. But it's what we're seeing out on the street. We're seeing, I wish I'd have taken a picture of it, the guy that drives a taxi, and it's outdated. It says taxi on the side. I just went by and picked up before I came to the meeting here out there in Antioch area. And he rides around with, those stickers on the side of his cabs. He has his own personal cell phone number on there. He has a Better Business Bureau sticker on the side of the door. It's not fair. We don't have the officers that are patrolling to make sure that we are doing what it is that y'all are governing. So you're going to have to give him more money to be able to have more policing, because we don't see him downtown. And so you're just allowing everybody to have a permit. And especially with this Uber and Lyft thing. I mean, did any of y'all happen to find out that they were charging 3 times the amount during the inclement weather? I mean, is that fair that you're allowing these sort of people to operate? But that's what they charge. And, we'd like to keep our permits. The fact that we've given out as many as we have in the last couple of meetings, so be it. Okay, we need to expand because the city is expanding. But let's put a limit on it and let the professional ones do the job. That's what I think is fair to Nashville.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. Melinda Grant.
I'm here to oppose the raising of the insurance rates. This will absolutely kill our company because we own the fleet. Raising these rates are going to cost us at least 50%. We're looking at $36,000 a month just on insurance for 61 cabs. So if you raise it, we will have to go out of business. And we have fought too hard to get our permits. And just like the gentleman just spoke about Uber and Lyft, they came here illegally, lawlessly to this city, to every city in the world. Why Nashville allowed them in and opened the doors is beyond me. Memphis has banned them from the city. I mean, there's a lot of cities that have banned them. Uber and Lyft have hurt this community of taxi drivers. And since they've come in, these guys are hurting. And if you raise the insurance to more cost upon more cost, after a while it begins to look like there's a double standard here. Something is wrong. The insurance agents have proven over the past 10 years that we don't need these rates. So we're asking you to please not raise them. And there's a real concern for the taxi industry because as it is now, the taxi cabs are probably going to go out of business in a year or two, depending on Uber. And they've already stolen business before they ever even got permits. And I just think the taxi industry has just been treated very poorly. And if you could take into consideration what these guys have had to go through. Most of them have had to come in here from other countries. They've had to start from scratch. They have families. And they're doing their best to support them and to serve the community, the city, the best that they can. And the taxi companies, as well as the managers and the insurance agents, we're all in this together. And when the industry gets hurt, we all get hurt. Everybody suffers. So thank you for hearing me today, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Benny Hapti.
Good afternoon. I've got a few points. My first, in general, I'm against TLC when I'm here because I don't believe TLC is doing the right thing. When it comes to insurance issue, sorry, this thing is. We came up here, I personally came a few times to speak about the drivers, but it seems like none of us hearing our voice. We just came here for nothing, but the commissioners, it seems like, I'm sorry, this is my opinion, but it seems like you guys just already plan what you're going to decide here and just make a decision. But this is my point. TLC, if they giving a permit for the company, not for the drivers, right?
I'm sorry, which point are you talking about? Which hearing?
The permit, the insurance in general, and safety. If I'm not clear, please ask me, I can clarify it. The TLC give a permit for the company, but not for the drivers. That's my understanding. And if the TLC give the permit for the company, let the company insured, but not the drivers. The drivers is, insuring their own. Am I clear?
I understand, except that is actually not within the commission's purview. It's up to the company itself whether it chooses to pay for the insurance or put that on the driver.
Yeah, but it's falling on the drivers.
I understand, but you just heard Miss Grant with Green Cab, and Green Cab actually pays the insurance for its vehicles.
That should, my understanding, that's the way it should be for every cab companies.
We have no control over that.
Okay. It's TLC. And the other thing is, this is under safety issue. Last time we were told this is for the safety issue. But when it comes to safety issue, I've heard another guy, when I worked in Forest, he had an issue to get his permit. That's how we consider to drive a cab, to hold our permits. We have to, the TLC have to look our background very well before they grant us, the permit. But when it comes to Uber, it's not. For me to drive a cab, if I have 2 driving tickets, citation, my permit will not be renewed at the end of the year. But if I'm driving for Uber, I can have 10 tickets and I can still drive.
That's not true.
It's not true?
No.
Okay, I'm wrong then.
Mr. Habty, which company do you drive for?
Well, I drove for several companies.
Which one do you drive for?
Currently I'm driving for Nashville Gas. So all I am asking is, my point is, I want the companies themselves insure their company property, but not the drivers.
How does Nash Vegas handle its insurance?
Every one of us paying for the insurance.
But aren't you
a shareholder?
Yeah.
But the shareholder and the driver is 2 different things. When I'm driving, I'm a driver. If I do anything, I can get fired. I'm a shareholder. It's just like an investment for me. I've got an investment. Right. But if I make any mistake, the company has 100% to fire me, and I will accept that. There's 2 things, the driver portion of it and the shareholder. The permit doesn't belong to me. It's for the company. TLC gave the permit for the company, not for me. So my point is, again, let the company insure the entire business property, including the taxis.
That's a decision for your company to make.
And I would think when you became a shareholder, you would have known what the rules were going into that. That's just my assumption. My assumption that we were told was the shareholders are the drivers. It's a shareholder-owned company. So you're facing management and worker in the same mold. You're management and you're a worker, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
So as management, you want to make sure that the drivers are doing what they're supposed to do, correct?
That's correct.
And if you were just management and the driver wasn't doing what they're supposed to do, you would not want them to drive.
Say that again.
If you were management and the driver was not doing what they should be doing, you would not want them to drive for your company, correct?
Yes.
Well, you've just answered your own question.
Yeah, but I mean, when it comes to this, the insurance, the TLC is pushing us to have a certain coverage to increase the limit.
We haven't pushed anything yet. That's what we're discussing right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm against.
Okay.
For. And instead of dealing like that.
Well, stick to that portion of it then, and don't go off on everything else.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I think this is all I can say right now.
So do you have a point with regard to the insurance limits?
The insurance limit? I mean, it's adequate what we are currently covered.
You believe the current limits are adequate?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Angela Moyo.
Thank you for the podium this time. I'd like to begin by saying I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to serve as a taxi cab driver in the greatest city in the United States. And as such, I adhere to some of the strictest regulations in the transportation industry. However, as of late, I've been struggling to make a living. With the increase of 370 additional taxis, plus the additional transportation options in the city, it's simply gotten harder. If I get downtown at 4:30 a.m., the taxi stand at the Omni is already full. and I find a position and pick up, by the time I get back, there may not be a place for me. There are days that I work 12 hours and I may not make $100. It's especially challenging if you sit on a taxi stand for 2 hours and get a $3.70 run. It's even worse when it happens to you twice in a row. Today I am working harder and I'm making less. I feel that this increase in insurance will create a situation where taxi cab drivers are working harder, creating a safety hazard for us and the public that we serve. I feel that in the greatest city in the United States, with a booming, prosperous economy, taxi cab drivers should be able to make a good living without putting the public, ourselves, and our families at risk. Please reconsider this insurance increase. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tad Essa.
Hello everybody, I'm from Green Card and thanks for calling my name. And I think everybody talking the same thing about this insurance. We Green Card, most of the cars we own it, so we pay our insurance. But current situation, the market is very slow, and sometimes we don't have that many drivers, and we have very limited income. But I'm worried if we raise the insurance premium, we'll be out of business. Please let us stay in a business. Thanks for giving us all the opportunities and the privilege. We appreciate you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Burrow. Diddy Ely. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, yes.
Yes, sure.
My name is DT Eli. I'm with the Magic Taxi. I will talk about three keys or three main important things. One is for insurance. If you look at it, where the Nashville International Airport, the appendix E indicate that number 2 indicate that comprehensive automobile liability and amount of not less than $1 million combined in single limit written on occurrence basis as otherwise required by United States federal government or state or Tennessee or other government agencies having regulatory authority over the operation of the operator, which is you guys. The insurance company must be rated excellent, A- or better, approved by authorities, chief financial officer. Last time you approved Demotech, which is A- or A+, but they didn't have a chief of financial officer like Etho American Insurance didn't have one, and we worry about the airport will kick us out. the Progressive Direct Insurance, Tower Insurance, and also Polaris Insurance companies, all of them have it. they all of had a chief financial officer. Do you aware or do you know, or the airport, they will kick us if they don't have it for the chief financial officer. If you look at it, Appendix E, the one I colored on it, indicate that this provision does not apply for division of taxi cab. It does apply limo, shuttle. For example, consumer insurance never had A- or better rating. In fact, almost none of the taxi insurance companies have A- or better rating. Taxi USA, Allied Nashville Cab, current used insurance company who does not have a best rating keys. If the airport authority only allows the insurance companies rated A or better, like consumers, they had a B++. So,
Mr. Eli, which company do you drive for?
I'm with the Magic Taxi.
Magic Taxi.
Yeah. If insurance you rated as higher, like Sucru, A++, or Superior or Excellent, we will ask in my company to approve us a coverage which indicate right now we have 100, 350. We would like to have a 50, 150, which we can get it riders. Right now we cannot get riders to underwriters, actually insured underwriters. So if we get it 50, 150, we will get easily underwriters, and also we can get it financial chief financial officer. Otherwise, it's hard to get it. My second one also, it is a rotation for the taxi. For the taxi, for the rotation of the taxi permits, we also have a problem for broad taxi, where we train new drivers for if they come to the city or if they move another city or another state. When they go over there, they test English, and that English they couldn't pass. We wanted to reduce the English, to take off the grammar, to put regular English, or our company will train them as a normal trainer. We also have a trainee. Last time they went to Mr. Bill Field, and Bill Field told them you have to go back to you have to talk to the pro taxi. The third one is chapter 6-7 relating for requirement. We don't have problem with that if you issue new certificates and that, but Uber X and Uber Taxi, since you're issuing with them, we also want a new company to see around with us. For Uber X and Uber Taxi, we would like to, put higher requirement with the Uber X, since they didn't use the insurance we use, since we pay the fees we pay, airport we pay a fee, they don't pay for it. We pay $3.50, they don't pay us $1. We pay for a lot of fees that, as you know it, they didn't pay none of them. Also Uber X, they didn't pay none of them. We are requesting and asking for my company or other taxi drivers to lower the insurance coverage to less than 50, 150. And thank you very much.
Just 1 second, I'm sorry. We don't have any authority or say-so on what the airport does, who they let in, et cetera, correct?
That is correct, and I did have a specific conversation with the airport several months ago about insurance, and it was described to me that whatever the insurance that we require for the taxi cabs is what they would require for the taxi cabs. Now, whether or not that's in their documents, I can't answer, but that was a very specific conversation I had with staff, because I'd heard that same issue.
And I also just want to make the point with Uber and Lyft. That's their decision to let them in, whether they charge them, whatever they charge you. We don't set those fees. That's strictly the Nashville Airport Authority.
We understand that, but are you aware of them? Do you know about them? So we get charged, but they didn't get charged.
I understand. I'm just saying that's not under our
I
review.
understand.
Yeah.
I do understand, definitely.
Your company currently has the new rate of 100, 350 in place?
Right now, in March 1st, we are waiting to move on 100, 350, but the Demotech is approved last time, they will carry on. But the Demotech, their problem is they don't have a chief financial officer.
So did I misunderstand you that you currently don't have the 100, 350 in effect?
Some of our cars, they do have it with the Progressive. Some of them, they are with Tower. They are different companies. Different companies have a different rating.
Gotcha.
Like consumers, if you look at the paper I have in there, consumers have it.
I understand different companies have different ratings. I'm just curious what coverage your drivers have, and I think what you're saying is some have it and some don't.
Yeah, we have a different one. And some of them, they already have it because since you move into the program, since in March, 1st of March, you move into the 300, actually 100, 350, they already have those guys. Okay. But some of them, they couldn't have it. Like Progressive, they're going to look for the credit record. Some of them, they failed with that. So they moved for the Demotech, but Demotech also have the same thing. But those with the consumers, they're about to fail off. So some of them, they're gonna fail off this month, on 22 this month. Some of them, they're gonna move until October. But we wanted to keep consumer. If you raise up for the coverage, consumer will go away. If you keep it as is, which is 50, 150, consumer will stay. And also we will get another, underwriters to different companies or different states. And all of those ones, they will have a chief of financials. In that case, thank you very much.
Mr. Mohammed Dunyi.
Good afternoon. My name is Mohammed Diriye, and I am the manager of Tenkat, as well as a driver. On behalf of the fellow drivers, I would like to request the committee, the commissioner, as we request last time, what we are paying right now is enough. Especially the drivers are suffering. For the last 2 months, since Uber and Lyft are in the market, and right now almost we are paying $350, $340 to get the insurance. The last market is really very down. I would like to request the commissioner, what we have is enough. If we increase, it will just kill the industry. And I have the same concern that all the other people that are spoken before me, they have. So I would like to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and please consider our concern. We brought this last August, again we bring it, and the reason why we're just trying to bring it again and again, we know that this will kill the industry. And we don't want to die, we don't want to kill our drivers. We like to keep doing what we are doing and to serve the community as we used to do. And even like when the weather is changing, when the things is going on, we only the people that are serving for the community. So I would like to say thank you, and please don't increase the limit. Thank you.
Thank you. Ahmed Abukar.
Yeah, my name is Ahmed Abukar. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to come in front of you. As you know, it will be very, very hard for taxi drivers in this situation that we are now, with the challenge that we are facing with other companies. It will be hard to raise and pay that amount of money for new insurers. As you know, cab drivers, each cab driver pays $635 to TLC each year, $15 a month, $20 for renewal of the permit, plus $75 each car, which is $635 only TLC. In addition to that, I pay Davidson County business license. I have paid, commercial business tax. We are paying a lot. We are the only people who pay state tax. If someone here is Tennessee, doesn't have a state tax, but we pay state income tax as a cab drivers. The fiscal year of June, we will go to the Tennessee revenues. We pay state income tax, Davidson income tax, plus property tax for my car. All that we are paying, we can't afford, again, high insurance. Plus, the city, since Uber and Lyft come, the people who are working nights, picking people from the restaurants, from the hotels, from homes, from bars, are out of state. They are from California, New York. Anybody who comes down here who wants to stay 4 days, next night you will see him in downtown, picking, dropping. Nobody have a control over them. I have proof of that. I get an accident with a lady on 30 New Year's Eve. She was working for Uber. Her plate number was for Indiana. Driving license was Indiana. And also the tag was expired 8 days before the accident. And she was working for Uber. She's working in this great city, Nashville, because nobody have control over them. Nobody have oversight of them. So, please, we need someone have to consider. Let them get CB, commercial business tax. It will be easy for the commission, transportation license to control them, the law enforcement to control them, because nobody knows a car from California and comes down here working in Nashville for free, and I'm paying all of that money. I have a license to work here, pick up and drop. So we become the same. So this means that I can say only this is a wild west now in Nashville, what's happening. So please, we need you to consider what we are saying and see those cars that are working in that situation, and those are who have a permit and who have a license, not to become same and work at the same place. So please don't raise the insurance. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sue Mann.
Good afternoon. I wanted to speak on Rule 3 and 7B, both of them today. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak. Sue Mann from United Cab. Rule 3 places an undue burden on taxi cab companies. It's at best a draconian law. It might have been beneficial 10, 15 years ago when it was put in place. I'm not really sure when it was, but back then there was not that great of a need for taxi cabs. Now, this month, we have demonstrated, the city's done studies, you guys have issued more permits and certificates of convenience, that there are need for more taxi cabs. So after these taxi permits have been issued, it serves no point to pull those permits back. As far as Rule 3, we ask it to be vacated or suspended indefinitely. 7B, which is increasing the limits for insurance. Right now it's $50, $150. Nathan, David, they've both spoken to the fact that I think you said there's been 2 that have gone over the 50. The taxi drivers pay $300 to $400 a month. Some might even pay more for insurance. If you guys raise the limits to the $100, $300, I'm not sure exactly how much it's going to go up, but it's double the coverage that they have right now, so it's got to make a difference. It's hard enough for the taxi drivers with the rise of Uber, Lyft, and all these limo companies, the horse and carriage, the rickshaws downtown, to make a living. So please, do not make it harder on them. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. That concludes all the requests to speak that I have. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on any of these 3 issues? At this time, we'll close the public hearing portion for these 3 issues and now deliberate as a commission on whether to change any of these 3 rules or leave them as they are. or vacate them. Or I guess abrogate would be the better term.
Well, as I understand it, the liability insurance will go up to $100, $350 on Sunday, unless anything changes here.
Right, and it looks like the uninsured motorist coverage is already in place, and it'll just remain the same.
Okay. Mr. Fields, could you enlighten me? There was a comment about why a person with multiple traffic tickets could not be allowed to drive for Uber. What stops that?
The ordinance that this commission recommended to the Metro Council actually puts very similar, and I have to be honest with you, I'm pretty sure it's the same limits on the all of the livery drivers as there are on taxi cab drivers. So if as it was described, if a livery driver, and that would include the TNC drivers or Uber, Lyft, or any of the others that might be here, if they were to have 10 tickets in a period of time, they would just not be eligible to drive. So they would not be licensable, and if a company allowed them to drive, the company would be at risk.
What's current liability insurance at the airport?
And again, I can't speak for the airport. In the conversation that I've had with the Metropolitan and with the airport authority, their staff's indicated that whatever insurance requirements that this commission places on taxi cabs is insurance that they will, in other words, they accept whatever we put on there. So there was I think there was an issue about general liability insurance for a company versus liability insurance for the cars. The conversation I had with them is was about liability for vehicles, and they would accept whatever this commission. They advised me they would take whatever this commission imposed by rule.
They don't have a standard at the airport requirement for taxis coming on the airport property.
Again, they may, but it's my understanding is whatever we establish is what they're going to enforce.
I thought we visited this one time when we were first looking at it, and someone advised us as to what the airport coverage was.
I know that they did have a requirement as to my recollection is that they had a requirement as to the rating of the insurance company provided that they did have the AM Best distinction, much like we had that issue come before us previously as well. So, I mean, but I don't know in terms of the amount of the coverage. They do have their own set of rules and regulations for operation on airport property, I believe, and they may have some other slightly different rules from the rules of this commission, but I'm not aware of. I don't have a copy of that.
Do you
on
have
me
that
currently.
information? Yeah, you go.
Airport gives the authority for the taxi commission to set the liability because it falls into the last sentence. That falls up with the paragraph 4.
Okay.
That's probably correct.
Okay. And we did, in the last conversation we had, put the best ratings on that, did we not?
We added DMATEC to the
Right.
AM Best categories of ratings that can be, or companies that whose ratings will be accepted.
Right, presently it's AM Best rating of B+ or better, or Demotech rating of A or better.
Correct.
Okay. So really what we're looking at is whether we're going to keep the limits or raise them as we previously had discussed.
Well, they're raising automatically, so it would be a question of whether you wanted to vacate your prior decision, or rescind, I guess would be the correct terminology under Robert's Rules of Orders, your prior decision to allow it to automatically go up to the higher 100, 350 as of March 1.
Again, I guess my question at that point, would we need to re-add the DMATEC if we decided to?
I don't think you'd have to change that part of the rule.
Okay.
But they just not amend it back now. That's what they're trying to present it.
Anybody have any thoughts?
You can amend this. Well, the prior motion amended it to raise it up, so you'd be rescinding that prior motion, and you'd also be amending the rule.
So just so I'm clear before a motion is made, the existing rule as of today, before March 1, is that the limits required are, or the minimum requirements are 50,000 for an individual, 100,000 in the aggregate, and then 50,000 property. And the existing uninsured motorist, underinsured motorist coverage is 25,000, 50,000, and 15,000. And so that's not changing as of March 1, as of under this rule. And our present rule right now is vehicle liability insurance carriers must be licensed to do business in the state of Tennessee and must have an AM Best rating of B+ or better, or a Demotech rating of A or better. So that's not changing on March 1 either.
Given that the number of uninsured motorist claims are pretty significant, it only seems reasonable that that would change as well, the uninsured motorist limits. Being at 25, 50, and 15 today, and planning on them being 25, 50, and 15.
The only concern I would have about that is I'm not sure that we noticed on the agenda today that we were considering increasing the uninsured motorist limits.
Okay, that makes sense. But Mr. Spears and Mr. McAdoo, you only write.
Mr. Fields is pointing out to me that the agenda item is very broadly worded. It just says 7B liability insurance, and so I suppose it's possible we could discuss any aspect of that rule.
Okay.
Ms. Turner, and I think you were, I want to make sure, I may have some information on the uninsured motorists. In conversations I've had with the State Department of Commerce and Insurance, I asked the question about uninsured motorists, and again, we have some insurance folks that could answer better, and I think they've told me the same thing. Typically, the uninsured motorist they would track it with, if you've got 5,150, you would do uninsured motorists for 5,150. Is that generally true, or if it were, for instance, on mine,
That's generally true on the personal lines, personal insurance for sure. Commercial insurance varies from time to time, but there again, the 2550 is not my worry on the uninsured part of it. My worry is at 15 because there's a lot of vans out here that these guys have got that are $20,000, $22,000. If it's a UM claim, they're not going to get to 15.
And
they'll be upset with me.
We appreciate your concern there. We have to have the concern for the for the public.
The 2550 is up to y'all.
Gotcha.
That's your decision on that one.
Do you only write it today for 5,150?
My office, I'm not sure what.
I think it's a legal requirement that we actually have to offer it. I'm not 100% certain on that, but it's pretty rare that people carry that limit. Most people carry the 25, 50, 15 because statewide
it's the lowest amount possible.
It's typical that you can reject it altogether if you wish, and we just recently changed, this commission changed, that you could not reject it, but that you must.
Okay.
So that was a step in a positive direction.
I know there was quite a bit of deliberation by us previously, several months ago, when we implemented this plan change, and there was discussion at that time about increasing the uninsured motorist coverage. And I don't remember the extent of why we ended up at 25, 50, 15, but that I do remember there was quite a bit of back and forth on what that limit should be.
Can I ask another question?
Yes. Yeah, of course.
So, one of you gentlemen mentioned the percentage of claims that involved uninsured motorists.
27% of our claims.
27%.
That seems quite high.
So that's a big number. Yeah.
Well, I think certainly if Mr. Fields is telling us that we have the broad ability to rescind or amend the upcoming March 1st implementation, then I think it's certainly within our power to raise the coverage amounts to be consistent with what the current liability minimums are if we wanted to do that. And perhaps create a new date for implementation of that if that was to occur.
Mm-hmm.
So the question comes down to, are we going to rescind the soon to go into effect the 100, 350? It seems to me it's our obligation to consider protection of the community and also to consider the protection of the cab drivers. We've heard a lot of testimony today that we've heard it actually one company says that if it goes up, they will go out of business, and they're our green company, a company that's committed to putting green cabs out there. We've heard some individuals talk about how it's very difficult to make a living. I don't think anybody on this commission ever intended for any cab company or any cab driver to go out of business, but having seen and experienced some automobile accidents, I find the ones that where there were major injuries, very few of them were with medicals under $100,000. That's anecdotal evidence from my own experiences, but it is a concern to me. But I also have a very grave concern for the changing transportation services of the communities, but particularly Nashville, that's going on right now with the introduction of other livery services that seems to be exploding. Looks like this commission has a real policy decision in front of them right now. And I truthfully don't know exactly which way to go. I recognize the concerns for the under and uninsured motorist coverage issues there, and I think we can all come to a consensus on that. But frankly, I'm torn between my concern that a serious automobile accident is going to be a lot more than, or could be more than, 50, 150. But I also have grave concerns about the impact of the 100, 350.
I tend to agree with you. We've heard evidence today that the existing minimums of 50, 150 are adequate. But we've also just recommended to the council regulations for all the TNC vehicles as well as the livery vehicles on what their minimums ought to be, and it's not rocket science to realize that consumers are going to figure out that they're better protected in a TNC vehicle rather than a taxi cab if they're in an accident, and that's an important economic consideration for the taxi industry. In terms of public safety, though, we have heard evidence that the current minimums are adequate. So certainly we could decide that we do not need to increase the minimums, and that would be perfectly rational decision, by the commission if we wanted to do that.
Well, that's a good point. Rates for some of the livery services are going to be higher than what we're setting if we rescind the increase. Rates for other livery services are going to be higher. There's going to be more protection. So the question is the cab companies taking a chance, cab drivers taking a chance that the public realizes they have more protection in a different type of vehicle?
I think the cab consumer that would be, when they're debating whether they're going to take a livery service or a taxi, it's going to be very minimal, the ones that will look at that level, that granular level in terms of their coverage and making that decision. So I think it's a way to give the taxi drivers a break in their insurance if that keeps them afloat and in business. But at the same time, it does create a hurdle for the livery, but this is a competition right now and everybody's looking to find some way to be somewhere fair, and it's just a hard thing to do. But I just think that if I'm a taxi operator, I'm willing to take that bet that it's not going to affect my business that much.
I'm willing to take a chance and just see how the commission wants to vote. I'll make a motion that we rescind we rescind the rule that would to increase the liability insurance currently to increase to 100, 350, and that we either amend or whatever to let it stay at the current rate of 5,150.
Do you want to make a motion with regard to the uninsured motorist amounts?
I'll make that separate. But
okay.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Make a second motion. Or do we have deliberate on it first, or?
No, if you'd like to make a motion.
I'd like for the uninsured, underinsured motorists to also mirror the liability insurance that currently stands at 5,150.
Second. Do you have a date for implementation?
Mr. Fields, what generally typically 3 months?
I'm going to defer back. I've had some issues over the years. I want to defer back to the professionals. If they were to require that the uninsured motorists go to 5,150, what would the time period be for the industry to be able to catch up typically? Is it a 30-day, 40, 90 days, 60?
I would think for maybe 90 days. It depends on each company on the filings and the regulations. You know, Hauler's already got the 5,100 already. That's what we're selling, but I can see one of those other carriers. Progressive has it available already as well, but there's other carriers that don't, and they have to go through the filing process with the state, and that is. And
you do have limited numbers of times you can file.
You don't have limited, but if you go more than twice, you start looking at it being downgraded. Okay. It looks like you're fluctuating your market a little bit too much.
I'll add to that motion that go effective 90 days from March 1st, which would be March, April, May, June 1st of 2015.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
What about the retention of taxi cab permits?
You know, I think it's, in my opinion, Rule 3 and Chapter 6.72 kind of need to be discussed together, because if we're going to change how we issue permits, whether or not we have to always find that there's a need for public convenience and necessity, then it makes sense to rescind Rule 3 if we're going to continue to have that as a prerequisite question every time we decide we're going to issue more permits. Then perhaps it makes sense to keep it in place.
We can't, this commission can't actually change the requirement in Chapter 672 that the prerequisite finding be made. All you can do is make a recommendation to council that they change that.
And thank you for correcting me. And that's what I meant. If we're going to make a recommendation to change 6.72, then it makes sense that we would rescind Rule 3 if that were to occur.
If I may, Rule 3 was created many years ago. It was very likely one of the earliest. When I look back at the history, I did not go back and check the minutes, but it was very likely done in the early 80s. At the time, I had some involvement from my days in the mayor's office back then in how the industry worked. The industry today is very different than it was then. And while I understand exactly what the chair is saying, it's crazy for us to give permits to cab companies that can't fill them. Unfortunately, one of the things that exists today, in the last couple of years, we've gone from 585 permitted cabs to 1,224 permits that could actually, 1,324 permits which could actually exist today. In that case, we've seen a reshuffling and a reordering of the permits that are actually out there in the cars that are on the streets. Many companies have lost cabs to other companies. In my conversations with companies that have been on the losing end rather than the receiving end, they're committed to trying to fill the positions, but there are simply not enough available cars and drivers. In the older days, there was typically, and again, I could be corrected by almost any of the people here because they've been in the industry specifically, there was a time where there was a waiting list at every company in town that could fill a slot as soon as there was a place. So the advantage was to the company in terms of who was driving, who wasn't. At this point, the company is having to recruit drivers and find vehicles to bring in. Some companies have actually purchased cars and then find the drivers. Others are not in that kind of a position. Because of the great changes that we've made, and I'm not saying those changes were bad, we certainly needed to serve the public. You've had 2 meetings in 2 years that found that there was an additional need in the city. Since there has been determined additional need, I think it's appropriate to allow the existing companies time to fill those positions, whether they would require vacating Rule 3, abrogating Rule 3, or suspending it for a period of time, a year or 2-year period of time to see if they could catch up. What I can't tell you is we could be in the same position in a year that they're still not able to fill all the positions, but right now they're not filled.
I like the idea of a moratorium on Rule 3 for, say, 1 year. Revisit it a year from now.
It's always easier to revisit than it is to reinstall.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I'd make a motion for a moratorium.
Or suspension, maybe?
Or suspension. I'm being advised by counsel. I like that word, moratorium. But suspension of Rule 3 regarding the retention of taxi cab permits for those that are not filled.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
If I didn't say 1 year, I meant to have 1 year in that motion.
I think you said 1 year.
That's what I heard.
The idea is we could bring it up whenever we wanted.
And why don't we just say for March 1st of 2016 to revisit?
Are you amending?
Is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. That leaves us with whether or not we'd like to make a recommendation to the council regarding Chapter 6.72. Mr. Fields circulated to all the commission members prior to the meeting the results of a study that was done and made publicly available back in 2012. And in that report, there was a discussion of the various types of structures that cities across the country have for issuing of permits. And the current structure we've got is one, for the lack of a better word, managed competition, which is a polite way of saying that the commission controls the number of permits based on a number of prerequisite questions and requirements. Other types of models that other cities have are medallion models, franchises, and also one where there's just the mere requirement of an entry standard. It's my understanding that Sacramento is an example of a city that has that type of model. The report that was done in 2012 at the time recommended to keeping the existing model of managed competition. That obviously was before Uber and Lyft came to town and other transportation network companies, where we have recommended to the council various requirements, entry requirements for them in order to operate. But that is clearly following under a structure of entry standards as opposed to managed competition. So when we last met, I know we had asked Mr. Fields to put before us in a public hearing fashion for us to consider whether or not it made sense to make a recommendation to amend Chapter 6.72 and suggest a new model for the issuing of taxi cab certificates and permits. And so I'd like to make sure we as a commission really deliberate that. I mean, that would be a big change to how we regulate taxis in this city. And certainly by no means would an entry standard system deregulate the taxi cab industry, but it would be less regulated in a sense that it would be easier for a company to enter the market. But we could also set specific entry requirements. For example, a minimum number of taxis and so forth to ensure that we are still meeting the needs of protecting the public safety as well as making sure that the companies that are seeking to enter the market have the character, experience, financial condition, and responsibility to serve the community.
Well, I do also appreciate that Mr. Fields sent us this report and reminded us of this study that was done, because it contains a lot of information about the effects in some of the cities where they did deregulation, and it noted that there were several side effects that were not particularly good for the cities. It dramatically increased the number of cabs, but it also didn't necessarily increase service.
I think we need to clarify, though, the difference between what we're talking about in different entry systems and actual deregulation, because it could be a scenario where if you change the entry system, then everybody gets regulated the same. And that's essentially what we're trying to do now. We took models from taxis and liveries and everything when council asked us to send them back their resolution and said, okay, how can we try to make this a more level playing field? But I think if we have two different systems of entry, then it makes it more difficult to regulate them in the same way.
And it's, from my review of the report or study that was done, the deregulation that was discussed was more of the problems, so to speak, that were pointed out were instances that could be addressed through an entry standard system to ensure or at least minimize the problems that might occur with true deregulation. One of the things that I will point out, though, that resonated with me when I did read the report was that the incentives that companies currently have to have ADA accessible cabs, that is lessened quite a bit when you go to an entry standard system, unless we just have an outright rule that all companies must have X percentage of their fleet be ADA accessible. And that would be, a way you could still address that concern and need for the city while shifting to that type of system.
Because right now we don't require Uber or Lyft to have a certain number of ADA compliant vehicles.
Correct.
And I'm assuming we don't for limousine service.
We don't require it for cabs either. It's just incentivized.
Right now it's incentivized by when we give out the permits to say, Part of this I find interesting is that in our last meeting we had more than one council member address us saying they hoped we would take the step to do that, when in fact we're not the body that can do that. They are the body that can do that. So I don't know if we want to send a kind message back to go, look, if that's what you want to do, that's your thing to do, not our thing to do. But we would need to phrase it correctly and make sure that we had all that together. But
I guess the one thing, though, is that this commission can deliberate about the pluses and the minuses and take time to review the considerations as to, and then make a recommendation to the council, because usually that forum's not the place where they can actually address some of the consideration and factors.
no, they would have to do basically what they did with Uber and Lyft and come to us with a proposed regulation that we would look at and try to help shape and then send it back to them. So obviously there has to be a sponsor, a council member has to sponsor that regulation and then send it back to us.
And Mr. Fields, if we continued on the same path that we're on now, no changes, we have no regulation in place that will provide for more green cabs or more ADA cabs at all.
The only provision that you have on ADA, you have two things on ADA cabs. The cabs that were given out during the 2014 meeting, you required those people bringing on cabs to do 10% of their fleet. So those that brought on 35 cabs had 4. The only other rule that you allowed any company by right to have as much as 10% above what you've given them as ADA without having to get permission. So a company with 100 could have 10 more and so forth. So the incentive was to put additional cabs on the street, you could go above your limit. Really only one company was able to do that, and they did look for they did do the incentives. We now have I don't know the exact number today, because again it ebbs and flows in terms of if they're in service. You probably have 30 ADA cabs on in that range today in Nashville, up to 30 to 35, which is good compared to 10 years ago we had 0. So we've made great strides, but
so we're at 3%, but not close to a 10% number. We're a little under 3%. And kind of the same way with green taxis, we don't have anything that causes people to invest in that. Okay.
As a commissioner, again, based on what you'd asked me to do, when you asked me to provide you information regarding what the systems could be, I felt that the RPM study that I did send to you, the one that was published in 2012, I think we put it out at the July meeting in 2012, outlined what those systems were. In many places where full deregulation has created chaos in some of the cities, and that's been done very few times. When you have unlimited entry, very often what happens is you do have additional cabs that come on, but what you also have is what the studies have shown. You have reduced services, you have higher complaints and additional problems. Again, the chair is very correct. However, there are rules you can put in place and it take council action to deviate from what the law is today. But you could establish a system of entry, and that if a company were coming in, they'd have a minimum of 50 cabs or 100 cabs. You couldn't have the 1s and 2s.
We do have the minimums now.
Correct. You could put it by rule. You can do those sort of things.
You can't go below 15 currently, and you can't go above, or you have to have at least 20.
Correct.
Would it help to read the relevant portion of the code as it exists that we're talking about?
Yes, thank you.
I think the most pertinent part is actually found in 672.060. There are a couple other provisions about the annual meeting that are relevant as well. So in a way, you kind of have to look at all Part 1 of Chapter 672 together, but I think 672.060 is for the most part the language that we're talking about. And it doesn't really say in any kind of crystal clear way. A lot of people at the last meeting were referring to it as the cap, and it doesn't really say that you have to impose a cap. What it says is that these are the criteria that you're supposed to take into consideration. If the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission finds
that further or additional taxi cab service in the metropolitan government area is required by the public convenience and necessity, and that the applicant is fit, willing, and able to provide such public transportation and to conform to the provisions of this chapter and the rules promulgated by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission. The Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission may issue a certificate of public convenience and necessity stating the name and address of the applicant, the number of the vehicles authorized upon such certificate, and the date of issuance. B, in making the above findings, the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission shall, at a minimum, take into consideration the number of taxi cabs already in operation, whether existing transportation is adequate to meet the public need, the character, experience, financial condition, and responsibility of the applicant, and such other criteria as may be adopted by the Commission in its rules. So basically, before you can have your annual meeting and address anyone's applications for either additional certificate of public necessity and convenience or additional permits for additional vehicles to be attached to an existing certificate of public convenience and necessity, you're supposed to make that prerequisite finding kind of with understanding of the existing number of taxi cabs and the needs of the public and all of those other variables. So that's how we've fallen into the current system that we have now.
If Metro Council were to rescind that, does that mean that cab companies can go out and just put more cabs on the road as they want?
Well, it would depend. I think what we were talking about was still trying to have a scenario where there were regulation. There was regulation in place on those numbers, but it was now regulation for the entirety of the transportation.
The requirement that you have 20 cabs to get a certificate is in another section of that part. So it would prevent people from starting a new company with fewer than 20 vehicles, and they'd of course have to meet all the other standards and rules that are currently in place.
No, but if that was removed, the requirement of a finding by this commission of necessity and public convenience,
right?
Could Green Cab then go out and just put 4 more cabs on without coming to us?
Yes.
Could United go out and put 20 more on without coming to us for a permit?
Yes.
Depending on how the council were to amend it, they certainly could.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now, we could still have regulations about the age of the vehicles,
sure.
Trying to encourage people to have green cabs and ADA and to service the outlying areas of the county. But basically what we're doing is we would make our January meeting incredibly shorter, and that we would not have all the cab companies coming to us asking for additional permits. Is that what would happen?
Yeah, they would just go to Mr. Fields and say, we're putting another cab on, here's our $600 or whatever.
Yeah. Again, depending on how the council wrote the legislation and any subsequent rules that you would place on it, it certainly could be that way.
Yeah. And in talking in that section about such other criteria as may be adopted by the Commission in its rules, the only one I find on this issue is Rule 3.
Is this something we ought to take public comment at during another meeting before we actually make a recommendation?
It was noticed for public comment today.
Okay.
And you don't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to take action. This was placed on the agenda based on I think it probably came, as the chair described, the council raised the issue. You asked to hear it publicly, and we had a public meeting. And we certainly can report that back to the council.
Well, I think it's a really interesting question of policy. I tend to think that while the council is the one empowered to make a decision on whether the rule changes or not, the council still does look to us as kind of the frontline volunteers to help the council figure out what makes the most sense. And certainly, I'm not saying they would defer to what we think, but certainly respect our collective decision on what we think would be something that the council ought to consider. So, I think that if someone wants to make a motion, I do think it makes sense to, in the motion, make it clear to the council that we are considering this. We're taking this very seriously. Perhaps it's certainly not an easy question of deciding what to do. It would be a significant change to make a recommendation that we go to a pure entry standards system. But it also, to Mr. McNally's point, it certainly doesn't make much sense if just in a de facto way we're not really requiring in a manner that of when it comes to the prerequisite question of is there public convenience and necessity that is commanding that we issue more permits. I mean, if the answer to that question is, well, if you're coming to me, there must be a need and there must be a public convenience issue, here's your permit, then it does seem to make sense that we should think about making a recommendation that we change. If we are going to continue to really seriously have that question answered each and every year, then we shouldn't change it.
Another available resource, I guess, to you all is that Metro Code Section 2100-040 says that the Commission is entitled to call upon the police and the Chief Traffic Engineer for advice on matters of public safety and proper traffic control. So to the extent this issue impacts that issue, you could seek advice from those resources as well.
Well, it's an interesting dichotomy because we're talking about vacating the retention of taxi cab permits because right now there's not enough drivers to fill those. So it's not like if somebody says, okay, let's do this, all of a sudden it's going to get flooded in a ridiculous way. It's going to become, in my estimation, more of a market-driven scenario to begin with. So this is just my thought process on it, is right now we're just finding specifically for this company or that company, and it's other companies get left out of that equation when we just make those decisions on who's going to get the permits and who isn't going to get the permits. So that's another way to look at it. If we're going to continue to grant permits or we're not going to take any of them that aren't used away, should we not just say, let the market handle itself, because you're going to have drivers for it anyway.
Right. I think that from an economic standpoint, academic standpoint, it certainly makes sense that, as a commission, we're asked to ensure that the public safety and needs of the community are met with respect to the industries that we oversee. By changing our system to an entry standard system, I don't think we're getting rid of that responsibility by any means. We still have the needs of making sure that the taxi cab industry is safe and that it is a industry that the community can feel very good about using. If I were able to make a motion, I would think it would make I would move that we recommend that the council consider changing rule point or chapter 6.72 to allow us to fashion an entry standard system and set up specific requirements for either the entry of new cabs or the additional issuance of permits to existing companies that would still allow the commission to meet its obligation to ensure that public safety is being met. It would, as Kurt's pointed out, likely not cause this sudden influx of additional permits being requested in the future. I think there would be a major shift amongst the taxi cab industry of drivers going to different companies and whatnot. But that's what I would recommend.
Drivers still have to go through Mr. Fields and sometimes us to get a permit to drive a cab.
Yes. We'd still be reviewing people, individual driver applications, certainly.
And what's interesting to me, on the short time I've been on this commission, I've seen it go from a few cab companies that you traditionally recognized as yellow, taxi, United and some of these other companies, to where there's a lot of independent companies, so to speak, for lack of a better word, like Volunteer Cab, 10 Cab, that are cab driver owned. So the industry really is changing. What I would love to be able to see is if we went to like an entry, if Metro Council decided to go with an entry-level system, there was still a way that we could create some regulations to encourage, give some real incentives to move the cab industry in part of the direction that this commission wants, and I think Metro Council wants, and that's some of the green cabs and servicing people with disability and getting to the outlying areas of the county, which seems to be an area that we really have no authority to enforce, but just to encourage. And the way we do that really is we'll give you a permit if you'll agree to do some of these things.
There's an existing taxi cab rule that says that you do have to respond to calls from all corners of the county.
It's very difficult to enforce, but it's it is there.
Well, right now, a de facto system we have, the incentives to have the ADA cabs or the green cabs is pretty minimal, given that we now have 1,300 something permits and existing companies are having a difficult time filling the ones they have.
So is this something we should actually make a motion for, or is it more you going to council and saying we're looking at this?
I'm going to follow the direction of the commission. I certainly will go back to the council. Again, I think there's a couple of different ways, from my perspective, here we go. We could clearly go back to the council and say we consider, that the commission considered and had public hearing related to how taxi cab companies enter the market and how more cabs are actually created. We found that there are many ways it can happen, but the reality is the council has to enable the commission to establish any rules or that sort, to change what exists and do others. The other alternative is for you to, and my legal team is going to love this, is you would direct us what you'd like for us to recommend to council. We would bring that back to you for consideration, and then you would either say yes or no.
Another thought I have is that you could adopt something along the lines of what council does and calls a memorializing resolution. You can certainly adopt. You don't have to take any action whatsoever. Just because we have it on our agenda doesn't mean that you have to do a thing. But if you choose to do something, one option might be to adopt a resolution, which can be kind of almost like a letter. It can be just, kind of a statement, saying, that we considered this and, kind of along the lines of what Billy was saying, but coming from you all as opposed to coming from him. Sort of now be it resolved by the Transportation Licensing Commission of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County as follows.
Who is, is it really incumbent on the industry itself to go lobby the council and say, hey, we really want to change our system and, we're going to work with you to, propose some new regulation for you to bring up to council, or does that fall on Mr. Fields?
Legislation can come both those ways. Any council member can sponsor legislation, at their own decision, at the request of a constituent, or for whatever reason they want to. Also, sometimes legislation comes through a department, through the administration, with that recommendation.
And we've experienced, the commission has experienced that all three ways. The booting regulation that we have actually came from the council to us.
The TNC regulations came from your office.
The TNC, the entire rewrite of the livery, the pedicab and pedal carriage, as well as the low-speed vehicle, came from the council back to us for comments, and then back to the council for consideration. So we've done it about every way it could be done.
Guys are awful quiet down there.
I guess my concern is at our last meeting, somebody from the audience mentioned deregulation would kill the industry. And I'm trying to think of how it would kill it. Maybe it would kill it through service of the riders. I'm not sure. I think we do need to talk about this more and make probably another public hearing before even considering it. Because I was the one that said, hey, let's just open it up. If Uber and Lyft can have as many permits as they want, why not? Why can't the taxi guys?
Yeah, I think their statement, though, and I don't want to speak for them, but I think their statement was about total deregulation, not,
right.
You know, there's a difference between just saying you can have, anybody can be there as long as you follow the regulated rules.
Well, I think we need to look at other cities in this also and see if there's any other cities out there that have essentially unlimited available taxi permits.
That's not a bad idea. Is there any way we can do that before we...
Staff can do pretty much anything you want. It may take a day or two. We'll figure it out.
Well, the reference to Sacramento struck me as very interesting because it seems like that's a city that's of similar size. And I would be interested to see how their system is operated and worked.
From what I read in that Mr. Fields provided us, every city that went to deregulation went back to regulation.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Typically, that's been the experience.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to make a motion that we table any resolution or recommendation to the council on this until, and ask that it be put back on the agenda for next month. And also request that staff could find out if Sacramento or other cities, and maybe even provide us someone that we could call and talk to who has got experience with it, dealt with it.
The only caution I would give you in terms of the time limit next month, we have some regulations that involving fees for in the livery service. We're going to have a pretty lengthy agenda, and staff's going to be pretty concerned. We'll
change that to 2 months.
This doesn't have to happen tomorrow.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. I agree. I think the motion we just passed is really prudent. This is a big consideration we're making, and we should give it all the time it needs.
Mm-hmm.
Any other business, Mr. Fields?
I have no more.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.